I got into brewing because I was working in fine dining and I just got tired of the stuffiness. And meanwhile, you see, you talk to all these people working in the beer industry, and the sales reps are coming in and trying to sell you beer, and it just sounded like a fun place to work without all the pretension of working in white tablecloths. So that's what got me into it. And indeed, the experience and the culture is why made that switch. I wanted to work in a more casual environment with people that really cared about what was happening, as opposed to what the name on the sign was. I think that's what it really was for me. And then you also, eventually as a chef, you fall in love with the fact that beer is such a simple thing. It's essentially 4 ingredients, and these wizards take these 4 things and they make this magic out of it just by tweaking a temperature here, adding a subtle amount of an ingredient there, the yeast selection, hop selection, grist, adding 1 pound per barrel of something that sounds really innocuous, changes the entire flavor of a beer. Like, that's the fascination for me. And I think what kept me in it for over a decade was culturally, it was just a much more friendly, welcoming community of people. Like, when you come from a world where every other person in your comp set is an enemy, and you go into a world where we all agree that we succeed together, I think that's a huge appeal, not only for the people that work in the industry, but for people who enjoy the industry and people who drink beer. You can be a fan of 2 breweries that are next door to each other. And I live in a place where that is a thing. There are literally 2 major breweries that are right next door to each other in the form of 21st Amendment and Drake's Brewing Company. They're literally next door to each other. And these are major production breweries. I mean, 21A is nationwide. They've got a brew house in the Midwest somewhere. They're on the East Coast. Drake's is as big as far as real estate goes, but their reach is more concentrated in California. But both of those breweries, they work together. People are going. The brewers from 21A hang out at Drake's, and the brewers from Drake's hang out at 21A. Like, that's how tight the community is, and that is the best example of why. The culture and the community and that experience, it starts with the people that work in it, and that translates out to the consumers, and people can feel that. I think they really identify with that.
And while I was on the service end of it at one point, then I was in kind of new business, working on partnerships with a couple companies that were working with a lot of chefs. So as part of it, we were interacting with a lot of like chef-driven restaurants. And because I had an experience with doing special events, there was a lot of times now an interest, as craft beer was starting to boom, with being able to kind of start to expose some of those audiences across each other. So I had put together a series. I was in a position to be fortunate enough to be able to put together a series of special events where I was reaching out to breweries and seeing if they wanted to pair up with these chefs and kind of do like tasting menus and do some kind of fun things together. And that was kind of my introduction, where I got to meet a lot of breweries up in the Northeast, where I'm originally from. And it was kind of early days of craft brewing. So this is like when, Sam Adams was still considered a, smaller craft brewer. I mean, I might be aging myself a little bit with that statement, but those were kind of how they started to come up. And at the time in Massachusetts, there was really only maybe 30 microbreweries that were starting to emerge at the time. And I'd have to check the latest count, but it's grown exponentially since then.